Okay, the economy. Very not good jobs report with some silver linings. We'll try and present as much of a well-rounded picture as we can. Let's put it up there on the screen. It came out on Friday. U.S. hiring stumbled in November as the economy added just 210,000 new jobs. Economists expected payrolls to actually increase by 550,000 in November. So, job growth undershot expectations in November. What they were particularly looking at is the fact that obviously that this missed. That being said, the unemployment rate did drop from the expected 4.2 to 4.2% from 4.6. At the same time, that's because a lot of the people have permanently dropped out of the workforce, retired early, aren't looking for a new job, and all of that. It really is just very difficult to show. Also, what we're really learning from these forecasters don't know a damn thing whenever it comes to the pandemic. They miss every month, it seems. They're like 800K and then it adds like 3 million. Or it's like, they're like, oh, it's going to be 550, add 220. It's
and
complicated.
Big revisions after the fact, too.
Like hundreds of thousands a month later.
Which is another reason why you should actually take all of these initial reports with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Because they've upward revised the past few months significantly, and this top line number didn't really match with, there's another survey, a household survey that they did that showed more job creation than this one did. But still, I mean, listen, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. That number is not a good number. It's a very bad number.
The one which you should pay the most attention to is leisure and hospitality, which is really the sector which is like the most blinking light of things are getting better, things are getting worse. Leisure hospitality only added 23,000 jobs last month. And I think that by that metric, you can see that with Delta and now with the Omicron freakout, which I will be talking a lot about in my monologue, I do think this is going to just be a noose around the neck of the economy for a long time until states decide, look, it's endemic and we have to move on because a lot of this is just going to continue. I won't, give away too much, but that's obviously my own personal bias. That being said, I want to bring you guys some of the potential silver linings within the economy. Let's put this New York Times tear sheet up on the screen. Neil Irwin, he's somebody I respect. He writes the Upshot blog. Where he talks about there is that most of the other evidence in the report actually points to a job market that is humming in some areas. So most notably, I already said the jobless rate fell from 4.2 from 4.6, and the speed with which unemployment has gone from a grave crisis to a benign situation is astounding because unemployment was 6.7% last December. In 1 year, we've experienced an improvement that took 3.5 years in the last economic cycle to actually come down from March 2014 to September 2017. Obviously, though, pandemic is very different than a structural, change in the entire labor force and the economy. So they also point to the fact that among people in their prime working years from 25 to 54, the share of people employed actually rose by an entire 0.5 percentage point, which is a lot. 78.8% in November, rapidly approaching the pre-COVID level of 80.4. So really what that shows is that, as I said, while you can see the hiring and there's a lot of early retirement, prime working male and women from 25 to 54, having them approach very close to that pre-COVID level, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, so what Irwin points to as one potential explanation for the fact that you have some, like the top line number, very bad, but some of the underlying numbers are actually good, including wage increases and including the fact that, as you're pointing to, the labor participation rate is up, is the fact that you do have this tight labor market.
Yes.
And so it could be the case that the soft job creation numbers are actually a result of the fact employers want to add more jobs, but they can't get the workers in hospitality and retail that they want in order to fill those positions. Now, of course, those employers would be very upset about that. But for workers, it's actually good news. I mean, that's part of why wages are being driven up. And something that we've seen since, the initial waves of the pandemic have started to abate and people have started going back to restaurants and those sorts of things, is that a lot of the workers, they don't want to go back to those jobs because either it was very precarious. They were, the first to get laid off when coronavirus hit. Their wages were already pretty low. These are industries with very unlikely to have health care. You're likely to have low wages, long hours, terrible schedules, lack of predictability, all of those things. So when they were forced to rethink things during the pandemic, a lot of workers decided, I don't want to work in these industries anymore.
Yes.
Either that, or they were the ones who were put the most at risk when, pre-vaccines, when this disease was really, I mean, not that it's amazing now, but when it was really ravaging the country, and it was extraordinarily frightening. So there's also an element of just choice here, where workers is saying, I don't care if you want me to work retail. Right. I don't care if you want me to wait tables. I'm not doing that anymore. So in the report, as you pointed to, leisure and hospitality saw a gain of just 23,000. Retail actually fell by 20,000 last month. Now that's on a seasonally adjusted basis, but that's pretty wild considering that we're in the midst of the holiday season. Retail should be booming.
Humming. Yeah.
And it's not, and it may be the case that it's because workers are just saying, nah, I don't want to do this work. This is not for me.
I really think that's what it is, Krystal. And we've pointed to some people have made some crazy lifestyle changes. So put Heather Long's tweet up there on the screen, which is that some 2 million or so people, 2.4 million people have just not returned to work, and perhaps at this point just have no intention to. 1.5 million are women, 900,000 are men. And in that larger female figure, what we've pointed to in the past is that Washington Post piece by Henry Olsen, where what did he talk about? It's like some people are returning to a more single family model. And actually with the 900K men, it could also be vice versa. What you're seeing is that people are like, hey, it's actually better for my life, especially with all the craziness with the pandemic and with school, to have one parent who stays home and one parent who is the major earner. It keeps people out of the two-income trap where they'll have to make more and more money in order to justify the relative same lifestyle. But it also just goes to show some people's priorities could be changing, which I completely support. I think it's a good thing in order to balance more towards your home life away from your work life. And so having that change with 1.5 or 2.4 million people not having yet returned, that could just be a major social cultural change forever that we'll just have to grapple with.
The concern is that it's not a choice.
Yeah.
Right. The concern is that it's a lot of, look, there's no doubt about it, as much as we would like to have more balanced gender roles, during the pandemic, when kids were basically forced to be homeschooled, it was women that overwhelmingly bore the brunt of that, dialed back their hours or left their jobs or whatever they needed to do to be there with the kiddos to make sure that, they were sitting in front of their Zoom and they were more or less doing what they were supposed to be doing. And so childcare is really, really expensive. And it's one of the costs that has, continued to go up. So you have to have the ability to earn a salary that is more than the cost of childcare.
Well, a lot more too.
To justify it. And so that's a real barrier. If you separated from your job during the pandemic, that's a real barrier to going back in, because you got to find something that, is not only going to work for your family, but is also going to make up, the childcare costs plus some, to justify the fact that you are going to be then, away from your kids more and not have the flexibility and the freedom that you had before. So that's a concern, is that, look, if personally, there are a lot of men and women out there who would love to be home with their kids, who would love to be homemaker. That's not what I would think. I would go crazy personally, but it's not for me. But a lot of people are wired that way, where that's what they want to do. I would love to have a landscape where that's an affirmative, positive choice that people can make, and that they're supported and able to make that choice. The concern is that right now, because we haven't put those supports into place, it's less a choice than a necessity because of just the cost of childcare and the unavailability of childcare too, because there were a lot of places that childcare places that shut down.
Yes, one of the hardest hit sectors in the economy. I'm a big believer in something called a family voucher, where people can either spend it on childcare or they can just keep the money for income support, give it to their grandparent in order to help them. But there's not enough sensible people in DC in order to actually give people that choice.
That's right. When we run the country, that's the sort of things we'll do.
Yeah, in Saagar land, that's how it will work. Unfortunately, will never be a reality.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it, you get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.